from previous two classes, we are learning about decision tree induction, right? Today we'll learn gain ratio, algorithm for decision tree induction, and an example for that. Gain ratio. Impurity measures such as entropy and Gini index tend to favor attributes that have a large number of distinct values. When we have large number of distinct values, it is better to go for entropy and Gini index. Consider this example. So we had 20 examples in this, that is 20 training examples we had. In that, 10 belongs to C0 and 10 belongs to C1, that is classes. Two classes we had, C0 and C1. 10 examples belongs to C0 and 10 examples belongs to C1. So when we divide this according to the gender, that is male and female. So male will get 10 values, 10 examples, and for the female we have got 10 examples. Among that, in male, for C0 it was 6 and for C1 it is 4. For female, for C1 it is 6 and for C0 it was 4, right? Similarly, when this is binary split. This is binary split. We had only two distinct values, that is male and female. And multi-way means more than two values. When we have more than two values. So here for the car type, we had family, sports, and luxury. And for the customer ID, we know that it is different for each customer. It is different for each customer. So when we have 20 customers, for all the 20, we'll get 20 nodes here. Okay. So here, comparing the first test condition, that is gender with the second car type. Okay. First example with the second example in the figure. Okay. Car type seems to provide a better way of splitting the data since it produces purer descendant nodes. Okay. When we compare to these two. So first one, it is confusing whether to consider it for class 1 or class 2 or class 0 or class 1. It is confusing. But when we go for car type, 3 values belongs to family type, and in that it is C1. 1 is for C0. So we can consider that car type family belongs to class C1. So maximum is C1. That's why we can consider it for C1. Similarly, when we go for sports, all the 8 cars of type C0. So if car type is sports, we can say that classification is C0. And for luxury, we have one classification C0 and for 7 cars, we have classification C1. So I can say that if the car type is luxury, classification is C1 because maximum belongs to C1. The customer ID appears to produce purer partitions, but customer ID is not a predictive attribute because its value is unique for each record. Using the customer ID, we cannot predict the classification. It is not possible because it is a unique value. It is a unique value for each customer will be having different customer ID. So for first customer, it is C0. For the 10th customer, it is C0. And for the 11th customer, it is C1. And for the 20th customer, it is C1. Okay. So it will continue for the first customer, second customer, up to 10th customer. So first 10 examples, we had C0. Right. So it is not a predictive attribute. Customer ID, it's not a predictive attribute. It's just a unique ID, unique identification number for identifying the example. That's it. A test condition that results in a large number of outcomes may not be desirable because the number of records associated with each partition is too small to enable us to make any reliable prediction. So I cannot say that, for example, if I consider customer ID 10, it has the classification C0 is equal to 1. I cannot predict it is because of that customer ID. Because of that customer ID, it has got class 0 here. So we cannot do that. And when we have large number of outcomes, leave this customer ID example. So consider when we have large number of outcomes for any other attribute, it is not desirable because it will be having very small values, which is difficult to, using those small values, it is difficult to make the prediction. Okay, when we have small number of values, difficult to partition also and difficult to predict also. So there are two strategies for overcoming this problem. That is when we have large number of distinct values, more number of distinct values. Then first one is restrict the test condition to binary splits only. Okay, so divide it using binary split. You group it. You group some of the values in one group and group remaining values in another group. So binary split. So this is usually employed by the algorithm CART. We have an algorithm called CART. This employs this method. That is, it will restrict the test conditions to binary split. Okay, it will divide the group of attribute values into two groups. Second one is modify the splitting criteria to take into account the number of outcomes produced by the attribute test conditions. So we have to modify the split condition to take into account the number of outcomes produced by the attribute test condition. So we can consider when we perform the attribute test condition, how many values it is producing. How many values it is producing, that test condition. Okay, depending on that you divide. Depending on that you split. For example, in the algorithm C4.5, a splitting criteria known as gain ratio is used to determine the goodness of a split. Okay, gain ratio is used by the C4.5 algorithm. This criteria is gain ratio is equal to information gain delta. I hope you remember this information gain. Information gain divided by split info. Information gain divided by split info. So here split info is equal to summation I is equal to 1 to k minus into summation I is equal to 1 to k p of vi log p of vi to the base 2. And k is the total number of splits. K is the total number of splits. Vi is the value produced by the test condition. Okay, Vi is the value produced by the test condition. And we are multiplying that with log p of Vi to the base 2. For example, if each attribute value has the same number of records, then for all I, P of Vi is equal to 1 divided by K. This is the probability value. Okay, this is the probability value. So we have K number of, that is in each group, we have K number of values. In each group, we have K number of values. Then P of Vi is equal to 1 divided by K and the split information would be equal to log K to the base 2. This example suggests that if an attribute produces a large number of splits, its split information will also be large, which in turn reduces the gain ratio. So we can select the attribute when gain ratio value is more. We can select the attribute if the gain ratio value is more. If the gain ratio value reduces, then don't consider that. Okay, so this example suggests that if an attribute produces a large number of splits, when we have large number of splits, split information will be large. Split information, that is in the denominator of the gain ratio formula, we have split information. If it is large, it will reduce the gain ratio. Okay, it will reduce the gain ratio. When it reduces the gain ratio, don't consider that. So this is the algorithm for decision tree induction. We'll discuss this in detail. So tree growth of E, F, you are passing two attribute here, E, F. If stopping condition for E, F is true, then create a leaf node. So leaf is equal to create node and add a label to the leaf node. Leaf label is equal to classification that is given by E. Okay, classification that is given by E. That is whichever is having more values, we are going to use that. So leaf label will be classification. End that node. Okay, and return the leaf node. Okay, return the leaf node. If stopping condition is true, If stopping condition is true, that is where we have to stop creating the nodes for the decision tree. If that is the case, then create a leaf node and add a label to it. Identify, that is by giving classification for that. Okay, that is at the end what it classifies, that particular node. Just give the classification and end that process of creating the decision tree and return the leaf node. Okay, else root is equal to create node, root dot test condition is equal to find best split among E and F. Okay, we have two values here, E and F. Pass it to the best split. Okay, find the best split. Which one we have to consider, whether we have to consider E or we have to consider F. Okay, let V is equal to small letter v. V is the values. Okay, small letter v is the values, is a possible outcome of the test condition. Okay, it's a possible outcome of the test condition. Which test condition? In the 7th step, in the line number 7, we are finding out root dot test condition, right? Root dot test condition. So this is the possible outcome of the test condition. This will store all the possible outcomes. For example, if we have 5 possible outcomes, that will be stored in this capital V. Okay, that will be stored in capital V. All the possible outcomes will be stored in this. That is root dot test condition. And for each value, if for example, if I have 5 values in V, for each value V that belongs to capital V, do EV is equal to E, where root dot test condition of E is equal to V. So here we are going to check this condition, that root dot test condition, this value for E, whether it is equal to V or not. Okay, E is the test condition. On the test, for that test condition, I am passing E here. Okay, whether it is equal to V and whether E belongs to the attribute E. The value which you are passing, small letter E, belongs to attribute E or not. We are going to check that. If that is true, then child is equal to tree growth of EV, F. Now we are passing a new value for the tree growth. We are going to create a child node here. We are going to create a child node with a new value from the attribute E. Okay, EV, F. Then add child as descendant of the label and label the edge. Okay, so add the child node for the root. Add this child node for the root and label the edge as V. Okay, so for the root, you add child node. So root pointing to child. Okay, in the bracket you can notice root pointing to child and label the edge as V. Okay, give the value because that branch checks the value, right? It is usually we're going to check the condition. For example, I think you remember whether it is yes or no. We're going to write it on the branch. We're going to write it on the branch. That value is V. Okay, that is the test condition value which is equal to V. Then end the for, end if statement and return root. At the end, we have to return root. So you can notice that in this for loop, for each value V, we are going to check it. Okay, for each value V, we are going to check it. The details of this algorithms are explained below. That is, first one is create node. This function extends the decision tree by creating a new node. A node in the decision tree has either a test condition denoted as node dot test condition or a class label denoted as node dot label. Okay, so here for the decision tree for the node, it will be having a test condition. We are going to test the condition. That is where, for example, we are going to check male or female. So we are going to check we are going to check the gender value, whether it is male or female. Okay, so like that is a test condition. And then label will be what is the class label we have, for which class it belongs to. That will be the node label. Then the next one, it is find best split function. find best split function. It determines which attribute should be selected as the test condition for splitting the training records. Okay, if we pass more than one attribute, then which we have to select. Okay, which one we have to select, which attribute should be selected as a test condition for splitting the training records. The choice of test condition depends on which impurity measure is used to determine the goodness of splitting. Okay, again, it depends on the algorithm which impurity measure you are going to use. Gini index, entropy, or any other. Which one you are going to use, or gain ratio. Some widely used measures include entropy, Gini index, and the chi-square statistic. Chi-square statistic. And third one is the classify function, which determines the class label to be assigned to a leaf node. Which class label we have to assign? Okay, whether it is C0, C1, when we consider the previous example, whether it is C0 or C1, okay, class label, which one we have to select? Usually the one which is having more number of occurrence will be selected here. That is when we have confusion. For each leaf node T, let P of I given T denote the fraction of training records from class I associated with the node T. In most cases, the leaf node is assigned to the class that has the majority number of training records. I told you that is, for example, if C0 is 9, we have 9 occurrence of C0 and 1 occurrence of C1, then we are going to classify it as C0. Okay, that is majority of the training records. What it is specifying, the same thing will be assigned. That is when we have confusion. Okay, when it belongs to the same class, it will be directly assigned. So leaf dot label is equal to argmax of P of I given T, where I is the records from the class I. Okay, class I associated with the node T. T is the node. I is for all the class labels. Okay, I is for all the class label. We are going to check, and then whichever is having maximum value, that will be assigned. Where the argmax operator returns the argument I that maximizes the expression P of I given T. For example, if we have C0 and C1 as the value for I, for C1 if we are getting more, if for C1 it is 5 and for C0 it is 1, then it will consider C1. Besides providing the information needs to be determined, the class label of a leaf node, the fraction P given P of I given T can also be used to estimate the probability that a record assigned to the leaf node T belongs to class I. So we'll discuss this in the future classes. You will come to know what is this probability. I told you probability of I given the value T. We'll discuss this. Fourth one is the stopping condition function. It is used to terminate the tree growing process by testing whether all the records have either the same class label or the same attribute values. If it is having same class label or if it is having same attribute value, we can stop the tree growing process. So another way to terminate the recursive function is to test whether the number of records have fallen below some minimum threshold. If you have set some threshold, if it is less than the that threshold, don't consider it. Stop the tree growing process. This is another method. After building the decision tree, a tree pruning step can be performed to reduce the size of the decision tree. If you think your size of the decision tree is growing or decision tree is growing infinitely, then you can stop it somewhere. Or if you consider when you have built a decision tree, it is very large to classify the examples, then you can perform this tree pruning step also. Tree pruning step means it will remove some of the nodes from the decision tree. Decision trees that are too large are susceptible to a phenomenon known as overfitting. This also we'll discuss in this module itself. We will come to know what is overfitting. Pruning helps by trimming the branches of the initial tree in a way that improves the generalization capability of the decision tree. Okay, overfitting, it's an error. Okay, overfitting, it's an error while classifying the new example. I'll tell you what is it. So here, pruning means it will remove some of the branches, it will remove some of the nodes to improve the capability of identification of the or classification of the new example. So consider this example. It's a web robot detection. So we know that web usage mining is a task of applying data mining technique to extract useful patterns from web access logs. So we'll be having web access logs, that is how many people are accessing a particular web page, what they are accessing. That is, we are going to check the pattern. For example, students will be accessing something, and for example, teachers will be accessing something. And if it is a if you are an e-customer, then what you are buying, or if it is a seller, what you are selling. Okay, so to check the pattern, you should check the pattern of a web usage from a particular website. Then web access logs will be used. These pattern can reveal interesting characteristics of the site visitors. For example, people who repeatedly visit a website and view the same product description page are more likely to buy the product if certain incentives such as rebates or free shipping are offered. So if some person or people are viewing the same product many times, they are checking whether it is having free shipping or whether the cost is getting reduced, then they'll buy that. Okay, so this is the pattern. This is a pattern which we can get from the web mining. In web usage mining, it is important to distinguish accesses made by human user from those due to web robots. So web robots will also be accessing the web page, and human users will also be accessing the web page. But we are not interested in web robots. Okay, we are interested in human users who are accessing. We want to check what is the purchasing pattern of human users. So a web robot, usually known as web crawler, it's a software program that automatically locates and retrieves information from the internet by following the hyperlinks included in the web pages. Okay, web robot, it is also called as web crawler. It's a software program which automatically locates and retrieves information from the web pages by following the hyperlinks embedded within the web pages. Why it is used? Why web robots are used? These programs are deployed by search engine portals to gather the documents necessary for indexing the web. Okay, for indexing the web, that is, for example, when you search for the textbook, for example, we are searching for notes, or when you are searching for textbook PDF, so all the sites which contains that textbook or which contains the PDF of notes, it should be listed. It should be listed together when you give the search. Okay, for that these web robots are used. Okay, web robot access must be discarded before applying web mining techniques to analyze human browsing behavior. So when we have a web usage log, from that log we have to remove all the information which has done by web robot. Web robot access information must be removed to analyze the human browsing behavior. So consider this. This is an example for web server log. So here we have session and then IP address, timestamp, request method, whether it is a get method or post method, and requested web page, what kind of web page it was, the user was requesting, then protocol, which protocol has been used, and status number will be given by the web page, then number of bytes, how many bytes it has been accessed by the user, and then a reference. Okay, reference means that is the address which is given in the address bar. And then user agent means what kind of browser you have used and which is the system, which system you have used, whether it is Windows or Linux or any other. Okay, so this is just an example for web server log. So if we consider the graph of a web session, first web session. Okay, so first four rows for rows are for session 1. Okay, first 4 rows are for session 1. This session, for this web session, this is a simple graph. Okay, this figure shows a simple graph of this web session 1. So web session 1, it has begun at www.cesumn.edu.kumar, edu/Kumar. So this is usually the depth of this is 0. We consider this as base address. Okay, we consider this as base address and we'll consider it as 0. The depth is 0 here, and then within that we have minds. Okay, within that web page we have minds. So you can see here we have /mind. After Kumar we have /minds. Then after mind we have /minds_paper.html. Okay, then we have on the right hand side we have papers/papers.html. So this is the breadth. Number of branch for this root node. Number of branch for this root node we have 2, right? This is the breadth of the tree. Okay, this is the breadth of the tree. And for the first child node which is on the left, that is for minds, we have another child node. So we have depth of the tree is equal to 2. Depth of the tree is also 2 and breadth of the tree is also 2 here. So I'll tell you why we need this breadth and depth. Okay, these are some derived attributes for web robot detection. So we have to detect the information about the web robot and we have to remove it. Okay, to remove the web robot information, we have to detect it, right? For detection, these are the attributes, that is total number of pages retrieved, and then total number of image pages retrieved, and total amount of time spent by the website visitor, the same page requested more than once in a web session, errors in requesting for web pages, percentage of requests made by get method, post method, and head method, then breadth of the web traversal, depth of the web traversal, and session with multiple IP addresses, session with multiple user agents. Okay, so we are going to check all these for detecting web robot information within the log. So this is the decision tree made by the information given. So decision tree model for a web robot detection. So decision tree, when the depth is equal to 1 and breadth is greater than 7, then usually it will be class 1. Remember, class 1, it is for human user, and class 0, it is for, class 1, it is for robot access, and then class 0 it is for human user. Class 0 for human user and class 1 is for and class 1 is for robot. Okay, so if breadth is greater than 7, then it will be class 1. Okay, breadth is greater than 7, then it will be class 1. If breadth is less than 7 and breadth is less than 3, image pages are, this is the threshold, 0.375. If image pages greater than 0.375, then class 0. So like this, we have decision tree for this. This is the example for decision tree given for detection of the robot. Okay, so when depth is greater than 1, I'll tell you how we can identify the web robot here. Okay, the data set for classification contains 2916 records with equal number of sessions due to web robots. So equal number of session for web robot and human user both. Okay, class 1 and class 0. Class 1 for web robots and class 0 is for human user. Okay, 10% of the data reserved for the training and remaining 90% were used for testing. Okay, the tree has an error rate equal to 3.8% on the training set and 5.37% on the test data set. Okay, the model suggests that web robots can be distinguished from the human user in the following way. That is, first one, Accesses by the web robots tend to be broad but shallow. Shallow means it will not go in deep. That is, when you search for a web page, web robots will use more number of web pages. It will keep on opening just web pages. It will not go in depth for checking the content of it. Okay, it will not go in depth. That is, it will broad but shallow. Number of web pages will be more, but it will not check the content of it. It will not go in depth. Okay. Unlike human user, web robots seldom retrieve the image pages associated with the web document. Okay, it will less retrieve the image pages associated with the web document. Okay, it is interested in that address. Okay, it is interested in that address. Sessions due to web robots tend to be long and contain a large number of requested pages. So web robots analysis by the machine, it will take time. So session time will be more. The session time will be more. It is long and contain a large number of requested pages. Number of requested pages will be more. Web robots are more likely to make repeated requests for the same page, since the web pages retrieved by human users are often cached by the browser. So what we do when we open, when we are searching for some notes or some textbook, when we get the 10 number of links, we try to open all the 10 number of links at a time and we keep it as it is. We don't open the same pages again and again. But web robots are more likely to make repeated requests for the same page. So this is how the web robots will be identified. Okay, I hope you understood the concept. If you have any doubts, you can ask me.